Interestingly, the next gentleman, Dr. Tamura Akihiko, uh, he's again a big expert in Japanese government in wide range of multilateral collaboration. When we talk about international cybersecurity, I think multilateral aspects are equally important. Collaboration can be between two countries, but we need to protect ourselves from a more global perspective. So, Mr. Dr. Tamura Akihiko, sorry, uh, uh, he's a long-time friend of India. So I have had this opportunity to work closely with him. He's currently heading the Trans-Pacific Partnership related aspects at the Cabinet Secretariat, which is very interestingly revived by Japan by a very good leadership of Prime Minister Abe when the US President Donald Trump suddenly withdrew from TPP, and Japan, and I'm sure Mr. Dr. Tamura has a major role in that with Prime Minister Abe, who is very strongly interested in India with $100 billion of investments suggestions in the past. Mr. Dr. Tamura Akihiko has also been previously the chief coordinator for RCEP, the regional cooperation and economic partnership, FTAs with various countries and WTO. And more than anything, for this conference, Dr. Tamura has been asking me that for Japan's future, it's very important to have more IITians here. So Dr. Tamura has been very kind to say that. And he is also, before moving to cabinet office, he has been with the METI. Actually, he's, I think, on deputation to cabinet office, cabinet secretariat from METI, Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry. And there he was heading the uh, resilient supply chain policy, resilient supply chain initiative, which Ambassador Verma also spoke about. And Dr. Tamura has also expressed interest in utilizing Indian AI and data analytics expertise for the global supply chain analysis. So various things that Dr. Tamura can speak about. I'm just giving some hints that he has discussed with me. And Dr. Tamura, the floor is yours. And after you is Mr. Pramod Rai, who is again from IIT Kanpur and a WTO expert. So I would like it to be a sort of a dialogue between all of you. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Aki Tamura. I guess that Sanjeev's introduction of me has been a little bit misleading about my background. I guess it beautifully prescribed my background. So I hope that your expectation toward me is not as excessive as I want. But anyway, I am a kind of just a trade expert, which is my area, which is trade policy. It's not as fascinating as cyber security or finance or something. So still, I mean, out of my personal capacity, not as a government official, I would like to make some remark to make some token contribution to the success of this forum out of my friendship with Sanjeev. My kind of point I would like to make today is simply that I have a high hope for the future of India, but the current situation of India is not as what we want. Actually, as a part of the Japanese community, I guess everybody in Japan would like to see the more prosperous, more successful India. But I guess the Indian current situation is not really a kind of unleashing its potential. So we have been wondering why that still India is stopping short of doing that. Out of my expert, which is a trade policy, I have some my own personal kind of observation. In a nutshell, I guess India does not seem to have a strong middle income layer, which should be functioning as a kind of underpinning of healthy democracy, which also will generate a kind of virtuous cycle of prosperity and reform. At this point of time, even though India is proud of the fact that you have one of the most excellent democracy, still democracy does not seem to be successfully translated into the prosperity. I guess one of the reasons is that India is not having the solid middle income layer. At least looking back at the history of Japan as a East Asian country, strong underpinning of the society is a thick layer of middle income. So I guess one of the recipe for the further success for India is to develop the strong middle income layer. In order to do that, I guess you need to have a sound policy to develop this manufacturing sectors. At this point of time, the industrial structure is quite uniquely divided into kind of a high-tech industry, which is sustained by intellectual people, and the huge the chunk of agriculture, which are mainly sustained by the low-income people. India does not seem to have a strong manufacturing basis, and which seem to be has to do with kind of lack of connection with global supply chain. This is one of the reasons why we have been strongly suggesting to India that you should be part of RCEP. But I stopped short of saying that because India's political reality doesn't urge the India to decide onto that direction. But still, the Japan and myself is strongly convinced that at least the India should be more forthcoming to being part of the global supply chain. By doing that, India will be able to get stronger support and confidence in the further reform in many respects, ranging from land to agriculture and labor. Unfortunately, even though India has strong elements for the success of the future, such as very advantageous demography and talented people, still it's not, these kind of advantages are not successfully translated into the mighty India yet. In order to move on to that direction, being part of the global supply chain by opening up your market and country is one of the successful recipe. And also in that process, Japan and India will be able to join hands. Japan's strength is manufacturing, but our weakness is IT. India's strength is IT, and their weakness is manufacturing. And now we are getting to the period of fourth manufacturing revolution and cyber physical dual system. So in that new area, Japan and India will be able to join hands to bring about the prosperous future for both of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tamura Aki. Very insightful, and no, I don't believe I was exaggerating your introduction at all. I still don't know about your PhD. You have a deep knowledge across a wide range of areas. And I could see Mr. Pramod Kumar Rai, again my classmate, so I just of course call him Pramod, taking notes while you were speaking, and I could see that uh, he is getting quite stimulated by various points you mentioned about the global trade. Uh, Pramod has worked in India. Uh, well, he's my classmate from IIT Kanpur as a chemical engineer. And then he joined Indian government, uh, particularly Indian Revenue Services, and covering the both customs and excise. So that's import export, as well as excise, meaning of course the local manufacturing industry and the taxation on that. So he has very good experience on the aspects you mentioned within India. But then he moved on to do his law degree from India with a gold medal, and then master's degree in law from US, and started his own law firm, combining all his strengths about technology, manufacturing, and trading. And he's one of the leading lawyers on WTO and other anti-dumping related uh, litigations in India, and he's helped many foreign companies in India to successfully. And I think on many points, again, talking to you and Pramod in advance, I see a very good uh, alignment between your two of yours thinking. So one thing you mentioned about manufacturing, after Pramod, we have uh, two finance experts from India, Ms. Dakshita Das and Mr. Rajiv Sinha, who are also going to talk about the electronics manufacturing in India and the supply chain using the logistics. Mr. Narendra Bhushan is also here with us on the call right now, and Ashank uh, Desai, who is leading a policy institute at IIT Bombay. So we have very good audience here, but yes, turn by turn, I would request Mr. Pramod Kumar Rai. Pramod, for your words, please, on Mr. Dr. Tamura's very stimulating.
Namaskar. I will pick up from the speech of Mr. Tamura San. Yes, India's, there is a lot of inequality, and the middle income layer is weak. Today, in a population of 1.4 billion, roughly 60 million people file their income tax return. And the threshold for filing income tax return is fairly low. It's half million Indian rupees annual income. So very a small percentage of Indian population is actually well-to-do, and that is weakness. But the share of young population, the aspiring population, the population which is ready to work, that is huge. And there we see hope that India will do well. Of course, India will do well if its manufacturing sector, IT sector does well. India has created its own name in IT sector. In manufacturing sector is developing, but still we are dependent on a lot of technology transfers from West, from other countries. Japan has got a very strong technology to support the manufacturing sector. So Japan and India are natural partners. There is a psychological comfort also when it comes to any kind of relationship, interaction between India and Japan. We do not see each other as an adversary. We are always going to supplement each other. And I think for any kind of negotiation, this is an advantage for us. When RCEP negotiations started, India was initially a party. but in 2019 it pulled out. The reason for pulling out is partly economic and partly psychological also. The relationship with China today is not very cordial. There is an army conflict going on. So one is worldwide. I think every country in some corner of their mind, they feel threatened that their shops, their warehouses are going to be flooded with Chinese goods. With current level of tariffs, the balance of trade is adverse for India with respect to China. We see a lot of imports. And from the Indian industry, Indian manufacturing sector, there is a constant demand that they are not able to compete with Chinese goods. There is no such demand with respect to imports coming from other countries. And that is the reason that we see a lot of anti-dumping duties being imposed in India on imports coming from China. As an advocate, I know the case for imposition of anti-dumping duty is totally different. But the psychological things also plays a role. Authorities are more inclined to support an anti-dumping investigation being initiated against China compared to an anti-dumping investigation initiated against any other countries. So in this backdrop, when the current level of duties are not sufficient and government is taking recourse to anti-dumping duties. In fact, for Chinese imports, steel imports, they also fixed a floor price that you can't import at a price lower than this, which is in direct violation of MFN status, etc. Under the WTO regime. So the desperation in India was to the extent that they were even violating the express provision of the WTO treaty. So that is one. And then with recent conflict on this Indo-Chinese border, it is very less likely that India is going to be part of that RCEP in which China is also a party. India is apprehensive that it will derive lesser advantage and there will be more disadvantages because Chinese goods will be flooded in India. The only thing which can be countered, there is another factor. If RCEP is really very successful and China is a member of RCEP, then China, which has already developed into a manufacturing hub, it will be a preference for other foreign investor also, because Chinese good will reach to other parts of the world. If India does not join RCEP, then it may not be a favorite destination for manufacturing. So these are two contradictory issues. And if India sees a greater potential that by joining RCEP, India will become a favorite destination for manufacturing, it will definitely join it. But today, the way discussions are going on, India is very apprehensive that by joining RCEP, it will be flooded with Chinese goods, and India is simply not prepared for that. But yes, in today's world, multilateral treaties, bilateral treaties are very much essential. India and Japan can focus more on bilateral treaties also. There are already some bilateral free trade agreements between India and Japan. Some 1,000-line items are included, but many items are outside the list. They can work together to expand that list. I think with this note, I would like to close. If there are any questions, I will answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pramod. maybe this time I will just ask Dr. Tamura if he has any comments, because I think both of your points were really very well interlinked with each other. And yes, from my side, I would say yes, bilateral treaties between India and Japan, there are plenty of them, and if we can make them stronger, leading to electronics development manufacturing. Uh, Ms. Dakshita Das is joining us next, and Mr. Rajiv Sinha. They will talk about how bilateral agreements can help in the manufacturing in India, uh, with control between India and Japan. But yes, we can, of course, welcome aligned partners. So anyway, Dr. Tamura, any comment from you, please?
Okay, thank you very much, Sanjeev, and thank you very much, Dr. Rai, and honored to see you. Thank you very much for commenting on my remarks. My response to your kind of account are actually the threefold quickly. Number one, of course, you correctly pointed out that there are many ways for the India to open up your market access, not only that you're engaging in the RCEP, but also, of course, as you correctly pointed, that the bilateral may be the other way. But unfortunately, that as I said, that one of the reasons why we insist that India should be part of RCEP, it doesn't have to be RCEP, but at least bilaterals, the kind of downside of bilateral is not really suitable for the development of manufacturing sector, because the manufacturing sector is not simple, the kind of a system, but manufacturing sector have to be based upon the kind of connecting to the various destinations and various sources, not so just one single country.
Right.
So therefore, even though our bilateral relationship get the strongest, it won't so much help for the kind of prosperity of Indian manufacturing sector. So that's the reason why we are kind of suggesting you to be part of RCEP. But maybe RCEP may not be the only solution, but India itself should come up with alternative to be connected to multi-destination. Doesn't have to be RCEP, but you have to be part of the kind of regional and the global supply chain. This is number one. Number two is that I guess in order for India to carry out your further the reform, you should have a kind of reasonable level of external pressure. Look at what happened to China. One of the trigger of the reform is their accession to WTO. So India should have a similar type of kick from outside. So it doesn't have to be part of RCEP, but you need to have some reasonable level of external pressure. So number three, India have to be further mighty India, because at this moment, under the kind of the G0 situation, India should be part of a global leadership. But India seems to be very shy about being the leader in the architecture, global architecture in many fronts, not only trade, but also other policy field. So it doesn't have to be part of RCEP if you cannot, but still I think you should be more engaged in not just the bilateral engagement, but also more regional and multilateral in the many policies. So this is threefold I wanted to make.
Yeah, well said, agreed.
I must say, only a good friend can say harsh words, and Tamura-san is very nicely playing that role. His desire being India a strong country, and he's being reasonably critical about what we should do to be a stronger country, as Dr. Tamura and Japan really wants to do, as my personal experience has been. Prime Minister Abe on that bullet trains launch ceremony had clearly said, strong India is good for Japan, strong Japan is good for India. And he wants to see Prime Minister Abe wants to see India as a global manufacturing hub, including Japanese companies manufacturing in India. So yes, I think the feelings are 100% aligned. We need to work on the structures. Thank you so much, Dr. Tamura and Pramod. That was, I think, a very stimulating discussion, which has, I think, whet up